We're ready to start the next session. This will be a session on biometrics reimagined, new modalities and new possibilities. This panel will discuss new biometric modalities, including voice contactless fingerprinting, and infant biometrics, with a focus on standards, maturity, and a real-world applicability. Can I invite Sanjith and his other panelists on stage, and Sanjith will take over from here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I think the same room we had another session almost the same time, and my question was, do you need a coffee? I can't help, but yeah, I know the time is almost the final session of our 2-day marathon of sessions. But then, thank you for being in this room, listening to the discussion. That's very important when it comes to new possibilities. Now, probably I'll set the context a little bit, and then we'll get on to the discussion. Why new modalities, right? I think that's one important question to ask. There are a few reasons. So right now, when you look at MOSIP, we have 3 different modalities that are being used in our ID systems across countries. That's fingerprint, iris, and face. And we are also working with a lot of new partners. It's not new partners. I mean, they are long-time partners working with us for a long time. And the reason why we are focusing on these modalities, the new modalities or new technologies, are primarily on 2-3 reasons. One, inclusion, because we need to make sure the entire population is included. Right now, no one is talking about infant biometrics. We have a Simprints team who will cover what they are doing on infant biometrics. Some interesting conversation around that. Can a child give their consent at 1 year age, right? What is that they're thinking when giving their biometrics? So that's going to be very interesting to hear. Similarly, contactless, we have 2 organizations representing contactless fingerprinting. Antony is here from Identy, and we have Shankar from Tech5. So contactless fingerprinting, again, if generally it's a hardware play. I know we have hardware partners also sitting in the room, but then there is a cost effect that is coming into the hardware, and then probably it's a convenient way of collecting biometrics if it can be done with a mobile phone, right? But then there are some challenges. That's exactly why probably we haven't really included that in our accepted modalities. And the third one is Voiz. Voiz, again, a lot of work that we have done so far. And again, you don't need a purpose-built device, and it has got its own qualities when it comes to cost, inclusion, and scale. So this discussion is all about these 3 technologies, but then it doesn't limit there. We might get into palm print and many other discussions, but then these are the experts who are representing these 3 technologies for now, right? So with that, I will request, I know it's a 40 minutes slot session, and we have a lot to discuss. And before even getting into the discussion, I just wanted to highlight a few integrations that we have done so far. So Identy, I remember meeting Antony back in 2018 I'm not saying which national ID office, but then that was for a live demonstration with an ID system, clearly showing how the integration happens. Integrated with MOSIP successfully, there is an end-to-end integration that's in place with contactless fingerprinting. Similarly, Tech5, they have done an end-to-end integration on contactless, successful demonstration, but we haven't started talking about it for a national ID adoption yet. We'll come to that. Again, Anurag is here, and then Vivek is here, and they both have done fantastic integration so far. One is the SBI. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with SBI. It's about the collection of biometrics. How do you collect the biometrics? Based on that specific standard that we have, they've already done the integration. And Vivek's team, they have done a matching based on the ISO standards. So I think there are a lot of progress that's being done in this stage. And we were just discussing with John that probably we need to discuss more on the infant biometrics and see how to collaborate further, right? So with that context, 1 minute, would you introduce yourself and the area that you're working on? I've done that from my end, but once again, yeah. Antony, you can start from this side.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjith, and good evening, everyone. It's kind of a long day, but thanks for being here. So I'm Antony Vendhan. I am the co-founder of Identy Touchless ID. Probably you all might have touched a fingerprint scanner at least once in your life for ID, passport, driver's license. Our whole idea is, we all have a mobile phone, and your mobile phone camera is very, very powerful. Why do you need to touch the fingerprint scanner? So that is the idea behind Identy Touchless ID. So we use any normal Android phone or Apple phone to take a picture of your fingers, making sure those fingerprints are compatible with scanner prints, and they meet all the requirements of interoperability. So that's what we do. So basically, bring the service to us. Like normally, to get any services to use the purpose-built hardware devices, you need to go to a service provider. Our whole idea is bring the service to you. So we started the company in 2018. It is still in the green field. It is changing, but yeah, that is us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Antony. Over to you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjith, and hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Smith. I'm a product manager at Simprints. At Simprints, we use technology to increase transparency and effectiveness in global health. That's our mission. And one of the ways we do that is with our open source biometric solution, which is often deployed at the last mile in very low connectivity, very low resource settings. So think a kind of clinic in the middle of nowhere, hard to get to, very low connectivity. And one of the things we're working on now, which is really exciting, is an infant biometric solution. So we're working with a number of partners on creating the world's first infant biometrics solution that can be used with, reflecting a little what you said, can be used with a smartphone camera on an Android device. And yeah, at the moment we're doing a longitudinal study, so doing 12 months of data collection of over 4 million children, infants, and collecting their data as they grow. As we do that, we're in kind of the third month of that at the moment. So as we do that, we will start to play around with models and kind of establish where we think there may be the most impact from those solutions. And I would say, kind of grounding it in reality, I was in Ghana a couple of weeks ago, talking to community health workers who are using our solution, and they told us two things really when we talked to them. The first was that using biometric solutions in the last mile added loads of value to their workflows, both in terms of the kind of the nuts and bolts of being able to find the person in front of you, but also in terms of transparency across the system. And the second thing they told us was that the sooner you can contact someone, the sooner you can get records on people, the better chance you have of better outcomes in the longer term. And so we're really excited to extend what we do now to infant biometrics and see those outcomes and that impact for more people.
Thank you, John, and I'm sure we'll continue our collaboration beyond this meeting for sure.
Absolutely.
And Anurag, over to you, please.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Anurag, the founder of Turant. Turant is a Hindi word. It means quick. So the background of the company is my family, lower middle class in India. People in India love trading. They love buying and selling stocks or whatever it is. And the biggest issue they had is they didn't want to use, maybe they were not familiar with the internet, smartphones, computer. They just want to pick up the phone and trade. And they cannot right now. It's very hard to find a stockbroker when everybody is wanting to sell or buy. So that was the feedback, and it's amazing. It's work in progress for us. There's a lot of ASR companies, speech recognition companies, but not so many to be able to understand and follow and confirm your identity to the point that they can trade on it. So interesting other opportunities we are coming up, deepfake identification, especially on your phone. Son calling the dad that I'm in trouble, can you give this guy $300? I mean, one of the investors in our company actually went through that. And a mother getting a call from a daughter, and if we can have some sort of an agent on the phone. So those are applications, but we are finding now all over, from national defense to public safety. In US, there is an opportunity where during an emergency, police picks up the phone and says, hey, this is David, I need help. At that time, you can't expect that guy to authenticate himself or herself. On the voice, if we can identify that David is David or a group of 5 people who are there, hey, that's a few seconds saved. In the public good, our solution is built for large populations. Voice, even though we call it new modality, voice is the most natural user interface which has been around us for so long, for millions of years. We just need to find ways to maximize the usage for the public. So looking forward to working, a lot of opportunities, and it's fun work.
Thank you, Anurag. Shankar?
Thanks, Sanjith, for having this panel. I think it's an important topic to discuss, right? Because what are the new things that's happening in the market and what are the new possibilities is something that's exciting to talk about. I represent Tech5, Managing Director in Tech5, and we are a first digital identity company. We have the full solution stack to provide solution end-to-end for digital identity and DPI. And as part of the solutions that we have, one of the key modality that we cover is fingerprint, right? While we support the traditional fingerprint, when you ask yourself a question in the journey of innovation, what next? What are the new modalities to work with, like voice and fingerprint? What we say is that fingerprint is an old modality, but the way you capture it is a new methodology. Right? So, and just reciprocating what Anto was just saying, it becomes a key modality to capture in a different way because it unlocks a lot of new ways or new use cases per se, right? Because you have the foundational ID, and then what can you do with the fingerprint capturing on a powerful device like a mobile phone? That is the problem that we are trying to address, or that is the use case that we are trying to unlock. At Tech5, we have the contactless capture technology using your mobile phone. It could be an Android or an Apple device. And what you're able to do is, sitting at the comfort of your home, use the mobile device to capture fingerprint. It is in line with any physical device. The quality is as good as that of any physical capture. And it actually unlocks a lot of use cases where you're able to do self-servicing. So that's what we are trying to address and look at.
Thank you so much, Shankar. And finally, Vivek.
Yeah. Thanks, MOSIP, and thanks, Sanjith, for providing this opportunity. And good evening, everyone. I'm Vivek from Kaizen Voiz. I'm the Director of Technology. Rather than giving a very long brief on the biometrics, we are a specialist voice biometric company. I will put it this way. You say, my name is Vivek, I am from India, and I work for Kaizen Voiz. I'll enroll you across any of the conventional platforms, IVR, call centers, near field, far field, web-based application, digital POS. And you can come back and say, Hogayo ze maska, wakari mashta in Japanese, or your mother tongue. I'll still be able to authenticate you with the highest accuracy possible. We have done this by using 2 of our prime design patents, which is to do with the channel barriers, breaking the channel barrier and providing the best-in-class detection error trade-offs. And the second one is to break the language barrier, wherein English was a barrier. In most countries, like in India, where we have 1.4 plus growing population, close to 80% of us speak a mother tongue rather than English as a primary language. So here, it is a sort of a biomedium with respect to the emerging markets of biometrics, where voice solves several problems. One, the problem of taking a device, bring your own device, your phone becomes your own device. 2, the accuracy levels. We are in a stage where, rightly put by Turant systems, we are in the age of AI cloning. So voice holds a lot of information which can mitigate the risk of cloning and record and playback at a very high level, at a very base level also. So I would conclude by saying voice is one of the emerging elements in the biometric space. We are open to discussions on that area.
Thank you. I think, all the panelists, they have talked about the good things. And probably, my understanding is that there is no one golden or a silver bullet that addresses everything, right? So it's not that the new modalities that we are discussing is going to solve the entire issues. So a mapping of modalities versus the use cases or versus the assurance level is also very important. So on that context, again, since we are on the voice topic, right? I mean, it's primarily for Anurag and Vivek. What is the biggest challenge that you see right now in case of voice? Where does it work well, and probably where does it fail, right? Very quick answer, because we have a lot more things to discuss today. Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. I would say explicit authentication puts a hurdle. It's a gatekeeper. A non-explicit authentication is not a gatekeeper. It is a convenience. So we face challenges in terms of explicit authentication. So you give me a mic and ask me to speak about 1 hour on probabilistic linear discriminating analysis. Until you take the mic out of me, I'll be speaking. But it is not so when you're giving the mic to somebody in the public saying, record your voice for a few seconds. They go blank. So this is explicit authentication. This is one big challenge. So irrespective of you can speak any language, this is a challenge. But when it is non-explicit authentication, say for example, there's a charge of $1 on your credit card and you want to call the call center, your vocabulary will be flowing like the best in the world. So that is where the biometrics works well, and that is more of a convenience than a gatekeeper. So this is one major challenge which we face in the field of voice, very specifically, which can be mitigated by, time where you implement this and show this ease of use and convenience factor which comes out with the highest security.
Okay, so it's just as a follow-up question. Anurag, what do you think is the main challenge in your perspective?
I've experienced a different one. I mean, I agree with what he's saying, but it's the concern people have that we are using their voice, which they freely talk. They talk on the phone, they talk to each other. God, somebody is obviously recording right now. If that is being used, the concern comes from there. In fact, there was a major fast food company in US which tried us, was ready to deploy, but the biggest issue, the use case was you go to a fast food and you order a burger and fries, it says, thank you, sir, how about a free Coke? Because you're a good customer. Say, what else? The end customer says, what else do you know about me? You know, I came here yesterday with my girlfriend. Do you know that too? So they shut it down. So yes, I hope I am.
Thank you. So this one, I'm kind of switching between technologies. That's what I can do because we have 3 different technologies on the stage. So John, in the previous ID systems, or even I can see representation from Ethiopia and many countries are there in the room. Usually, when we talk about biometrics, collection of biometrics, we start from 5 and above, right? Why not 0 and above? And I know you are doing 0 and above. I mean, when you say infant, right?
Absolutely, from birth, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right? So why people are not really talking about, how you are speaking about it right now, right? I mean, why there are not many technologies in that space? Why is it so hard to collect biometrics from infants? I think just wanted to understand.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Sanjith. And I think it's not for want of trying. And I think that I'd probably point to 2 unique challenges when it comes to collecting biometrics and using biometrics from very young children. The first is that children fundamentally aren't compliant. So if I ask you to stay still while I take your photo, odds are that you're going to stay still and be compliant. If I ask my 6-year-old son, I don't know, it feels like it's 50-50, and that's not uniquely a reflection on my parenting. If I can't even ask a baby to stay still for me to take their photo or for me to grab their finger and take their fingerprint. And there are a bunch of challenges wrapped up in that. So we might talk about some of the different modalities we're exploring with infant biometrics, because it's not just one. But there are a number of challenges in say, taking a photo of an infant. In some cases, when they're awake, they like to look at the camera, and that's a good thing. In some cases, they might be asleep, their eyes closed, which might lead to quality issues. We've also been exploring taking pictures of ears and taking pictures of feet, which is all fine if the child is asleep, but is much more difficult if they're awake and they're wriggling around, and you need the assistance of a healthcare worker or a parent to hold the foot. Interestingly, one of the areas we've looked at and we had to kind of call time on relatively quickly was looking at palm biometrics, because we found that for very young children, they clasp their palm, and the only way you could get it open was to hold it open, and then that obviously interfered with the image having another finger in there. So in that respect, children's biometrics poses this kind of really unique compliance challenge. And then the other one, and I'll be brief, is that children change, and they change rapidly. So if I took your picture today and took your picture in a year, odds are it would be relatively similar, and visually I could determine whether it's the same person. A child's face changes rapidly over time, and one of the challenges in terms of identification and developing an algorithm that's effective and accurate is how do we deal with that change over time. And I think that that particularly applies to faces, but it also applies to other modalities, hands and...
So I think just a follow-up question, right? I mean, here, of course, the contactless and the voice biometric modalities, there are so many studies out there which actually talks about the accuracy, how good they are for 1:n match or 1:1 match, right? Infant biometrics, I'm not sure, probably I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of studies out there, but you are doing a lot of work there. So what's your view on accuracy there? And then second is, why do you need a very accurate, verification? What's your use case? I mean, just trying to understand that. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So in some ways, we're on untrodden ground with accuracy with infant biometrics, and a lot of the work that we're doing this year and the result of our models will kind of look at independent evaluations and see to what extent, with different data sets and in different contexts, they are accurate. We're kind of inclined to think at the moment that whilst with individual modalities, so face, foot, ear, individually, you definitely will see a drop-off in accuracy, say, compared to adult biometrics. But one of the areas that's really interesting is using neural networks to fuse those biometrics, so to use them in combination. And our hypothesis and what we're seeing is that actually if you do that, then your accuracy gains are much more. So that's kind of where we're going, and we're fairly sure that ultimately a solution that's productionized will involve some kind of fusion between different infant modalities.
Great. I think that there's a good amount of work that we have, and maybe there's a good collaboration that we can consider in the coming days. So this one, Antony, I think we have been discussing on this particular topic for a while. I know Identy as a contactless technology, they have also participated. I'm sure TechFair as well. The terminology CRADA, the first person who told about that exercise is Antony. I remember that. And there is also an element of interoperability that is coming in when it comes to contactless technology, because when it comes to a system like MOSIP, we need to ensure that the systems are interoperable, because the capture could happen with one technology, the matching might happen in another technology. So can you brief a little bit about how we progressed on the interoperability problem statement when it comes to contact to contactless? You can elaborate a bit about my question so that the audience understand what I'm asking. Yeah.
Thanks, Sanjith. So the audience, Sanjith's question is basically like, there is an enrollment system or an enrollment system that uses the biometric kits, which is the hardware-based device, where you always keep your fingers on the fixed position all the time. So we have something called DPI resolutions. It always comes out as 500 PPI for every fingerprint, right? So, but when you use a mobile phone camera, right, there is no fixed position. The position always changes. So and then how do you make? And then of course, there are billions of phones. Every phone has a different camera resolution. And how do you make sure this camera, whatever it produces, the output, would it match with a fingerprint scanner, right? But in the last 8 years, right, we started the company in 2018, the cameras are getting better, And of course, like, using the latest technology, like the way we capture, the way we do improve the fingerprints is as good as, or even some cases, I mean, it's our we claim. I'm sure, like, Tech5 also does the same. Is we are as good as, or some cases even better than fingerprint scanner. But like you said, NIST has published only one paper, right? The IR 8305, which came out in 2020. So that is the challenge, right? Because that is not the NIST priority, because NIST is driven by the US government. I mean, I have been always telling you, we have to find new ways to kind of define the standards for this interoperability. But based on whatever, I mean, we have been in this market for so long, like enrollments are still limited. We have done like, more than 10 million enrollments. Not really at the, like a foundational IDs, but more on the functional IDs. And it has been working well so far because, you can do enrollment 10 fingers. Of course, you can do that using fingerprint scanner, especially when it comes to verification. The best part of the mobile technology is, you can capture all, like thumb capture is kind of hard, but you can capture all 8 fingers, right? I mean, along with it, you have face also, right? So it improves inclusion. So that is our, real value proposition. You can just use one simple Android device, finger, face, and iris. I mean, this is what when we talk to some of the countries, I mean, of course, they always say, do you have FBI standards? That's where we fail. So our pitch normally is, use just a mobile device, use finger face and either iris, external iris camera, use the iris for the deduplication, right? And then use the fingerprint for verification, right? That solves your problem and it improves inclusion. And, it reduces your enrollment cost significantly, right? So the long answer, the short answer is still there are not enough, like, papers from NIST. Like, that's the biggest challenge.
I agree. I think that's again a work that's in progress we could see. I think recently there was a contactless technology evaluation guideline from the NIST, but then that was also not very prescriptive. I could see it's more up to the perspective in some sense, how you read it, right? So, Shankar, a question to you. Have you seen contactless systems that are like, when I say interoperable, the backend system is on traditional trained ABIS, and then at the front end you are using probably your contactless technology. Have you done some implementation like that?
Right, yeah, we do have implementations like that, right? And just building on your earlier conversation, where, as Tech5 or as this new modality that we are speaking of, contactless fingerprint, where it is very evident that it is going to be advantageous and where it is usable is in the verification part, right? There's a lot of, and it's not because of the technology, it's still like how Anto was saying, it's more on the required paperwork or studies that where the enrollment is kind of questioned, but the technology is ready to take as many as enrollment as possible. Now, coming to the interoperability part, right? So we do have deployments mainly on the enterprise side where, there are traditional ABCs where the capture has happened using the traditional devices, but the one-to-one authentication that happens completely contactless. And we do huge volumes, right? So it's very easily scalable, and, we do like 300 to 400,000 transactions a day, one-to-one verifications a day. And at least the new enrollments now are happening on contactless. But the acceptability is more, right now, at least for this modality, is on the enterprise side. Especially, when you have to take care of, large enrollments, because of all the reasons that it's already been spoken about, people try to go the traditional way with using devices. But yes, where we see this going is that as the acceptance increases, for governments, especially for governments with citizens of a certain size, contactless makes perfect sense in terms of cost reduction, right? It could be various ways of how you implement it. It could be, doing fingerprint and face using a mobile device and iris using a specialized device, just like how we mentioned, and using that for deduplication. That's a perfect way to look at it.
Yeah, that makes sense, Shankar. So I think this is a question for Anurag and Vivek. Generative AI, and that's I wouldn't say it's a new terminology, it's there for a while, but then beyond a point it's also becoming very scary because these days YouTube, you don't really understand whether it's a real video or a AI-generated video. So in that scale, right? And then recently I remember A.R. Rahman, he's the famous musician from India. I'm sure many of you know him. He created a song, and that was with the sound or a voice of a person who is no more. Okay, it was like some 60s or 70s. The person was there, and then he created that. And it was like, as a musician, he was telling it's almost 80-90% the same as that, right? So how do you see that as a presentation attack side of it? Probably Anurag, you can take that question. How do you handle those kind of attacks, right?
So we are using the digital twin concept in GenAI to actually identify them. So same, we are turning it on them. So let's not assume that just AI is only on one side. Both sides can use AI. So, and so with that concept, we have been able to identify. In fact, one of the opportunities where is that the artists, their unlicensed songs being generated and being sold on internet, they wanted a solution like ours to be constantly scouring the internet and finding them and identifying them and then they stopping them. This is an ongoing problem. We're going to use GenAI, they're going to use GenAI, they do GenAI plus, we'll do GenAI plus. So,
yeah. So Vivek, what's your take on that? Yeah.
Let's break it down. There's a vampire and there's a mosquito. Both drink blood. So, which is the imminent threat and which is the perceived threat is something which is doing its rounds. Okay, let's break AI into...
Just for fun, I was just thinking, if it's a mosquito, what biometric modality it'll use.
Yeah, okay. So, let me break down the AI part so that for the sake of the audience. So there is 4 schools of thoughts in AI. So we are looking at only one school of thought which is generative in nature. But there is an adaptive school of thought, there's a progressive school of thought, there is a generative school of thought, and there is a predictive school of thought. Bayesian theories, adaptive response theory, causal learning, catastrophic forgetting, right? Then you have data geometry. Without going into the basics of the data, we look at the geometry and decide on how to enhance your print, continuous learning. So generative AI heavily relies on very few factors. It's skimming the surface. Say, for example, if you take speech, in a speech spectrograph, you can take, say, pause, break, breathlessness, prosody of speech, interspeech variabilities, interspeaker variabilities. There are multiple possibilities which you can extract from a voice file, which is about 3 to 5 seconds, and try and create a voice biometric print. Now, the principle of operation of any biometric is the underlying statistical model in which it's a statistical problem rather than an IT problem. So at a statistical layer, if your extraction process is very robust, you can fight the simple problem, which is the imminent threat, that is the mosquito problem, by looking at the number of features being extracted. Your detection error trade-off will be way off the mark. Right? The highest layer of spoofing in voice is a record and playback. It contains all the liveliness factors which are required for a voice. It absolutely has all the prosody of speech. It will match within the audible frequency range, and it is so good. Synthetic voices are much lower in the layer. The record and playback is the highest level of spoofing as far as voice is concerned, but for several other biometric modalities, it might be different. So when you come into a generative AI perspective, where it takes a small bit of your voice, which is from a song, and which is from your speech. Let us say somebody records my speech today, and this snippet of 15 seconds, he takes and repeats it over on a different context by using 3 or 4 of the parameters. Because the recording point is a microphone, which is probably 2 to 7 decibels, and this is over the air. So the channel compensation technique, which we apply while extracting it from an interactive voice response, which is 9,600 baud rate, up to 64 kilobits on telephony environment versus 2 decibel to 7 decibel from a single microphone, near field, far field, to an array-based microphone is completely different. So usually what happens in the very higher end, as I said, the perceived threat of the vampire, falls flat on the face when you present such kind of synthetic voices to my system. We'll detect it very easily. Where this variation comes is, there is a trade-off. There is a synthetic voice, which let us say generator, which extracts all these features like what I'm extracting. It's a reverse response of biometrics. So some of the features will be so good that the current print will supersede. Let us say it is in a 0.2 or 0.3 decimal rate of likelihood ratio, is where we bring in something called as a liveliness. We give a time and a frequency and a space.
Yeah. Thanks, Vivek. I think that's great. So we have maybe a couple of questions. I have a lot of questions in my mind. So just one question to John, right? Consent is a big thing, right? I mean, for any transaction, for anything, we generally will give a biometric-based or non-biometric-based consent. And when you're collecting a infant biometrics, right? What legal controls are out there, and then how do you really manage the consent side of it? So, we were just having a conversation outside and thinking, a 1-year-old baby, what the baby might be thinking when the biometrics are getting collected. Why are you collecting my biometrics? What are you going to do with it, right? So what's your thought there?
Absolutely. It's a really interesting topic, and it's one we could talk for hours about, I'm sure. I think firstly, at Simprints, we have the benefit of lots of years of experience of thinking through this topic and working with frontline programs where consent is required. And so hopefully we've got lots of good learning here. I think fundamentally, when we talk about consent for biometrics, we have an existing model in so much that, a child can't consent to receiving a vaccine, a baby can't consent to receiving a vaccine, or blood's being taken. And so in lots of ways, without going into all the kind of specific legal details, in lots of ways we can treat it fairly similarly and make sure that we err on the side of caution and do consent in a very correct, proper way. We use kind of GDPR standards in terms of collecting and holding data. So I think on the kind of from the technical perspective, I think you can draw that analogy with those kind of other health interventions, and we'll always err on the side of caution and doing things as properly as we can when it comes to consent. Ultimately, it's parental consent for the child, which is the process you have to go through, and that obviously applies to infants. I think the other thing to say about consent is it's not a case of just turning up with a script and a button to press. It's about deep collaboration, both between the kind of technology provider and the communities and the organizations you're working with, but also between the health worker and the parent. I talked about being in Ghana a couple of weeks ago. Healthcare workers in Ghana have a fantastic relationship with their local communities, and that leads ultimately to a great consent process because they've built the relationship with the mothers, and so they are uniquely positioned to be able to explain what's happening and to be able to explain why we're taking a picture of their child's face or taking a picture of their child's foot. And so I think you can't underestimate the importance of that relationship.
Fully agree.
When it comes to taking consent.
Fully agree, yeah. So I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Do we have any questions from the audience? Maybe 1 or 2. Yeah, Yodahe.
In the Ethiopian digital ID law that I was a part of in drafting, one thing we did in biometrics, we didn't specify fingerprints, or we did not limit it to a certain modality because, voice may be the future, who knows, right? So it's a good idea not to include and tie yourself into when you're drafting laws for other country implementers. But my question was about, I was just wondering, because babies, one thing they do is cry a lot. They make a lot of noise. So is there any kind of work done around baby voice recognition?
And Vivek.
Yes, that would be the easiest thing to capture from a baby.
Yeah, so very quick, because I'm already getting instruction from my team. Wind it up very quickly or else we'll kick you out.
So very quick answer to that, sir. Yes, we tried out. I'm sure you heard about the cosmic sound. So babies and people with speech impairment or hearing impairment or vision impairment, people basically who are dumb, who cannot speak by birth, can utter only 3 words, oo, ah, and These are the 3 words which they can utter. And babies basically start uttering that. That's where amma, mama, papa, that's where they start.
Oh, that's
So-
interesting, Vivek. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know this.
Yeah, so it is the next class of patent we are applying. So there is a face and there's a voice. So there is a certain portion of your mouth which is to be open, either fully open, partially open, or fully closed, which we called as the lip syncing between the voice and the face, to give you a predictable theory that this voice and face belongs to the same person. We are trying to apply it to infants, but again, the prosody of the speech, as I said, for the infants are different. So there was also a question about, can I sing a song and get myself enrolled? Yes, of course. But when you come and speak, normally the prosody will be so low that there'll be a lot of false rejections. So we'll have to find a medium in between. But if the infant is able to repeat this crying process, what we call as a crying process is one syllable called oo or ah. So if this can be captured, this is theory, I'm speaking about theory. But again, it is the cost-benefit analysis, like interoperability. The target audience for this digital public infrastructure and goods is between the age of 19 or 18, we call it as, or 16 even, where there's a voting right in certain countries, to 90. So if you look at the shelf life of the biometrics, the highest shelf life is for the voice. You don't have to re-enroll over a period of time. Unlike several other biometrics, the modalities will change, the metrics will change. The inherent factor in your voice remains stable and constant over a period of time. Yes, it is not affected by psychological influences like cold, cough. That's more of the what we call as the nasal tract related issues, where we don't track the nasal tract for voice biometrics. It's the vocal tract or the phylogenical gland, where the cavities and the length and the breadth of your throat will depend on the throw, pitch, tone, and cadence, which is very unique to a human being. The short answer is yes, we are trying something, but again, the cost-benefit analysis does not allow us to go beyond a certain point.
Thank you, Vivek. John, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that specific to our context, it's something when it came to infant biometrics, it was something we looked at and considered. I think, like I said before, we work in kind of frontline healthcare delivery in particular, and one of the other factors that we considered and ultimately was one of the factors that led us to kind of rolling out voice as an area we explored as part of this study was, I guess, the noise around the voice as well. So in a busy clinic environment, there are lots of voices, and you guys might tell me I'm wrong and correct me and tell me that it's much more easy to isolate the voice than we think, but I think that was also a factor in kind of our early explorations around voice was what other noises are polluting this, and having been in those kind of environments, I'm sure we all have been in those environments. They're noisy, they're busy, and being able to kind of scientifically isolate a voice might be quite tricky.
Thank you, John. There are people waiting to take over the stage, so I'm not going to take a lot of time. So, as a wind-up note, one big challenge that you see, or maybe one big work that is remaining to make sure this becomes the new modality that is accepted by everyone, and probably a lot of countries adopting it. Within a minute, can you summarize? That could be your closing note. Yeah, Antony, please.
Thanks, Sanjith. So my ask would be the way what Aadhaar did, right? Iris was introduced by Aadhaar, and you are pretty much familiar with that, right? So what did they do to enroll 1 billion people? They took 10,000 people, irises, they did some tests, they published the results, they were convinced, they took the technology. So if the countries want to really move forward, I think that should be the approach the countries should take. Move forward, right? Don't rely on the Western countries because the purpose of biometrics for the Western countries is very different. They don't need foundational ID. Emerging markets need foundational ID. So we should be the one preparing those regulations, rules, and move forward.
Thank you, Antony. John?
Yeah, so for us, like I said before, we're early stages with this. So the biggest obstacle we need to overcome right now is collecting millions of images and developing infant biometric models. We're doing that now. We're taking an iterative approach to developing models, and we hope to see, well, we will see results really soon. I think kind of concretely looking forward from that, we're excited about contributing to standards in this kind of new space. We're also excited about getting our product independently evaluated and kind of turning that point on its head. We've done plenty of independent evaluations, particularly with data sets from our local populations or populations we've worked with. So I think those are kind of some of the key stepping stones. And then we're really excited to be able to deploy an infant biometric model that means you can track vaccine delivery from birth, means that you can monitor nutrition, means that even you can start to engage with civil registration and collect biometrics at that point as well. So, yeah.
Thank you, John. Anurag?
Yeah, so again, just like Kaizen, our goal is that I think using voice for biometric is the most frictionless, I would think. You can be on the other end of a 2,000-mile phone call and be able to identify the person. And there are multiple ways you can do that, multiple ways you can use that. The goal is, as I think he mentioned, that the Western countries may be too focused on fingerprint or iris and whatnot. Point is, let's try voice. Give it a chance. It is amazing how many opportunities there are. In fact, there is one company which is looking, a radio company, a walkie-talkie. They want to integrate our solution inside the device so that any time they are talking, they know who's talking and who they are talking to. So I would request and encourage countries to be more open to these kind of solutions.
Thank you, and Shankar?
See, the technology is there, and in the last 6-7 years, it's really grown leaps and bounds. So the efficacy of the technology is proven. I think what's required is more acceptance, right? In terms of policy, in terms of, like how Yodaya just mentioned, right? They have a policy where they don't restrict. It's a question of having the right data sets for the countries to say, okay, this is something that we can go for. And I think just the increase of that acceptance will actually help this modality to grow leaps and bounds. And it's not like a silver bullet, right? It's not one solution fits everything. It has to be a dance of all different modalities working together and having fallbacks and mechanisms in place, right? So if it's a certain size, then you have 3 modalities. You add voice to it. You add contactless fingerprint for a certain use case or whatever, right? So you will have to naturally progress into using the technology until it becomes the norm.
Thank you. Vivek?
My take is, as a concluding note, is to rely on platforms which can demonstrate clear intellectual property, depth in what is being developed, 2, and 3 is in terms of looking at continuous authentication, because going forward in the next decade, we are not looking at only explicit authentication at one level. It's going to be continuous authentication seamlessly between your home, your refrigerator, in the connected world. Hyperconvergence is just stepping in. So you speak to your refrigerator, come back to your vehicle and start speaking to the vehicle, and go back to your office and speak on the phone. So the modality of identifying or verifying a person would become continuous. So the reliance on models which are deeper in tech, which has the depth and the demonstrable ability to show source code controls. So this mitigates the risk of cyber theft or cyber attacks, where this can be fortified in such a way that the limit to which something is exposed to the external world can be stopped. So when you start relying on open models or open data sets, which are biased in nature, will compromise the quality and the interoperability of this product with multiple other ecosystems. That's my take.
Thank you, Vivek. I think there are so many topics that we haven't covered because it was just 40 minutes. And we didn't talk about the maturity of standards and many other areas. But then in one of the earlier sessions, we were saying MOSIP would like to play the role of a catalyst because, when we started the panel, we were saying scale, inclusion, cost, all these are very important for countries. At the same time, doing the right things with interoperability, standards, etc. All of them are important, right? So we'll continue making this progress. We will soon start small, limited POCs to understand our learning and complement the other, for example, NIST and others who are doing the similar work, right? We might kind of be able to do a complementary work and then accelerate this entire initiative, more like a catalyst to bring people together, and then it could be countries, could be universities, could be research bodies, right? So once again, thank you so much. This is for the audience first, for patiently waiting. Coffee? So patiently waiting and then listening to us, and then one round of applause for our panelists. They're all here, and then tomorrow there's an unconference. If you want to have deeper conversation on what could be the next steps, they're all here. Thank you once again.